Hi, Michelle Florendo here, and welcome to Ask a Decision Engineer. Listen in and find out how to untangle big decisions with less stress and more clarity. Have you ever found yourself at a career crossroads, wondering what you want to do next professionally? On today's show, you'll meet a woman who's contemplating that very decision. However, she feels like her heart and her brain are having a wrestling match, and as a result has avoided the decision for the past few months. Career decisions are often multifaceted, and so I work with her to determine which part of the decision is really getting her stuck, and I help her identify how is it that she can move forward with more confidence in her decision. Listen in to hear more about what she's facing.
So basically, I've decided that what brings me joy is to live in the middle of nowhere on a farm with my family, and they're all on board with this. And this means I have to rethink how I make an income or how I contribute to the family, because my current job is not possible to do remotely. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot tied into that. There's some insecurity about giving up my career, that I've worked hard to get to a certain place in my career and be established and recognized and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch attached to, if I do something else, I'm going to be earning a significantly different amount of money, which would most likely be a lot less. And does that mean I'm throwing my life down the tubes? And should I be preparing for retirement like everyone's been telling me for the last 30 years? That's what I should be doing? Or do I just follow my dreams? Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole bunch kind of related to, if I do start doing something else, what if I suck at it and I can't actually bring in any income? Would I be letting the whole family down?
All right. So there's a lot of different things going on here. And as with any decision, the first step is always to identify what really is the decision to be made. What are the things that are already decided? What are the things that still have yet to be decided? And what are the uncertainties and the things that are outside of your control?
I just wanted to wrap my head around which decisions have already been made and which are still to be made. Given that you had such a concrete date around when you needed to figure out how am I going to make an income in a way that's different from the way I do it now, does that mean that the decision to move to a farm has already been made, or is that also being decided?
So have you heard of tiny houses?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've basically ordered and paid for a tiny house.
Okay.
And we chose a delivery date of November 2019 so that we have, back then, we would have had 11 months to figure shit out. So that's why it's a hard deadline. So the house will be ready then and needs to go somewhere. So yeah, I do believe in constraints helping you get out of stuck positions, and we've been wanting to do this for so long that we decided let's just do it, and everything else we'll figure out in the time frame we've given ourselves. So we don't know where we're moving yet. Mm-hmm. We don't know what we'll be doing,
but you will have a new home that you can live in that can go somewhere.
Okay. So there already is a decision that has been made. It is not something that she is revisiting. She and her family have already decided to change their living situation, which is then precipitating this new decision about what she'll be doing professionally. And what she'll be doing professionally is really what she's trying to decide on. Now, when it comes to decision making, decisions always have 3 different components. The first component is your objectives. What is it that you want to see in the outcome? The decision that they made regarding their living situation tells me that she's very clear that one of her objectives is to be able to create a life that brings her joy. There may be other objectives, especially as she was outlining some of her concerns, but it seems like That's an area where she's already done a lot of thinking. The second component of any decision is your options. What are the different paths that you can possibly choose among? The third component of any decision is information, and we'll get to that later. But first, I want to dig into what are the different options she's considered so far.
All right. And so I know one of the things that you talked about is like, okay, how am I going to make an income? And you mentioned that you cannot do your current job remotely. So that isn't an option. Are there any variations on your current job or your career that can be moved remotely or no?
There are. So the current thinking is one of the things I am super passionate about is self-care coaching. And that is a bit of an overlap with my current role, which is an agile coach. So if I focus just on being a self-care coach, I might be able to do that remotely, but it would require me starting a whole new business and creating a reputation and all of that stuff around it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What else have you explored in terms of options, what you could do?
So the initial idea was that I would just do nothing for 3 months and try and figure out what is it that I really want to do and what is possible on the farm. Like, I want to do something with my hands. So I want to build stuff and make stuff. As to whether that'll bring in income, I don't know yet. So having the freedom to explore things, but no actual decisions around what is it I will do. So self-care coach is just one of those things that brings me joy and that I like doing. And so it's one of the things I want to try. Mm-hmm. But yeah, nothing concrete.
Okay.
So she's mentioned this deadline of sorts, summer, November 2019 for her. And yet that still seems quite a ways off. At the time of this conversation, that was still well over 10 months away. When you're contemplating a decision that is happening that far out in time, it's often useful to just double check. When does that decision have to be made? Does she necessarily need to make the decision now? Can she make that decision later? And if so, then what is the decision that she's facing right now?
And so when you talked about the idea of doing nothing for a few months and like using the time and the space, is that starting in November 2019? So like take the summer to...
Yeah, so it was supposed to start in November and figure things out from there. But it's also very daunting to not have anything. So yeah, it's one thing saying I'm allowing myself to do that. It's a whole other thing for me to actually allow myself to do that.
Aha. So here's where some of the stuckness is coming through. Original plan was to be able to take time to explore, but for some reason it feels daunting. So she feels like she needs to do something now. So what really is the decision at hand? Is it how to spend this time?
Tell me more about what is it that gets in the way of allowing yourself to just say, I'm going to give myself time, starting at that point in time instead of right now to figure it out.
I think just money concerns. Like, will we have enough money for me to have that luxury of doing nothing for a few months? And I think we've probably got enough money for me to do that for a few weeks, but for 3 months, that's going to be quite a lot of pressure and stress. And I don't think I'm going to be able to figure out what I really want to do if I have a whole bunch of pressure and stress on me. So, yeah, not ideal.
Okay.
So to recap, again, one of her objectives is to be able to discover what is it that she really wants to do. However, there are also some financial constraints that are keeping her from giving herself permission to explore later instead of now.
So if there were a decision between basically like when to start thinking about this, exploring options, and one was start sooner, the other is start later once you do move out to the farm, it seems like you're leaning towards now.
So I definitely think I should be doing something now. I have a lot of guilt of being present in my current work and exploring something else.
Now I'm getting a clearer picture of really what is getting her stuck here. On one hand, she doesn't want to wait until November to explore what opportunities may exist for her. And at the same time, something is keeping her from being able to explore right now. This tells me it's worth probing a little bit more to find out exactly what's going on here.
I feel like I'm not being honest about what I'm doing and what I'm passionate about.
Honest with whom?
With my employer, I guess. Like if I do something in my spare time after hours, I don't see why they should care about it. But yeah, I feel a little bit of guilt around that.
Do they have any idea that you've already determined that what brings you joy is moving out to a farm in the middle of nowhere?
So my team is well aware that I have this deadline of November and that's what I'll be doing. I don't think any of them truly believe that's what I'll be doing. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's interesting that there's some guilt around even using, it's not like you're using your time during the job, but even your time outside of your job to explore other things.
Yeah, so there's this funny gray line with companies where, you know, if I'm doing something completely differently in my spare time, then it's fine. But if I'm actually pursuing a business that might be vaguely similar, then it's not okay. And like the self-care coaching might fall into that gray area. I don't know.
Ah, guilt. So often, if you're the type of person who likes to make rational, well thought out decisions, you may be the type of person who shies away from any emotion. Or maybe you'll feel it and then you try to push it away. And what ends up happening is that your head and your heart are at war. A more constructive way of dealing with emotions is to see them as data. Your emotions are telling you something. Emotions are likely born out of stories that we tell ourselves. And so it's useful to examine what is the story that's precipitating this particular emotion. And once you're able to identify that story, then you can ask yourself, is this story helpful? Is it true? And if it's not, then you can ask yourself the question, what is a way that I can reframe the story so that this emotion doesn't get in the way of what I really want?
I totally get that in terms of like from a conflict of interest. And I'm curious whether I can see potential for a conflict of interest if you start doing business in an area that is overlapping with your current job. But since you mentioned that part of this exercise is just figuring out what you might like to do and could possibly work, are there things that you can do that don't yet cross into the line of actually establishing that business?
There are. I suppose there are a whole bunch of little experiments I could run in order to see what might work and what might not work. And as long as they're experiments and there's no money exchanging hands, that might be okay. I'm just making notes.
Yeah.
So to recap the various components of the decision here, when it comes to objectives, she's already mentioned she's looking for what is it that she would really enjoy, but also what is it that would work financially. We've talked a bit about the different options that she might want to explore. And so now it's time to examine how is it that she'll collect information on how those various options will deliver against the objectives she has.
And I'm glad you mentioned, this like prospect of running experiments, right? It sounds like before you're even able to make a decision of what you are going to do, once you get out there to the farm, there's a bunch of information that you'll want to be gathering.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, what is some of the information that you're trying to gather?
I'm curious too. So if you think about self-care coaching, I probably have to do like the Alt MBA again, but with that in mind. So who's my target audience? What is my niche? What are their wants and concerns and needs and blah, 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 all of that stuff, which would be quite exciting to do with this topic in mind. If I think about the other things I wanted to try, there's a whole bunch of skills I'd need to gain. So maybe finding local courses or something like that to learn those skills and kind of fast track the learning might be beneficial.
And what are some of those other areas that you're thinking about? You already talked about how self-care coaching might have this like overlap with what you already do. And then you also mentioned like making things with your hands. So I'm curious, like quite a spectrum. So I want to hear about some of these other ideas.
So I like tinkering with things. So there's some woodwork stuff that I want to learn and play with and see, do I actually like it or do I just like the idea of it? I like creating this like abstract type of art, which is kind of carving in wood, but then painting it. So, would anyone be interested in that kind of art? Because I've only ever created it for myself. And then also like all the off-grid type of activities. So making everything for yourself. So making shampoo and washes and laundry powder and all of that stuff, making it for yourself. And so learning how to do that and what are all the different flavors I can bring to it. And is there a possibility for me to teach others to do that?
What I liked about just watching you as you described some of these ideas is just watching your face light up too.
Oh, yeah, it brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah. And it seems like that's kind of the end goal in this, right? Like part of the move to be able to.
Yeah, it's all been a discovery in what do I actually want to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And definitely not working full-time in a corporate.
This is my favorite part of doing this work, being able to see someone shift from that stuckness and stress to a place of possibility and excitement.
What other ideas do you have on how you might spend this time between now and when the tiny house arrives to continue to explore?
So there's none of these are income producing, but the whole move to tiny house off grid has its own little steep learning curve. So I have a whole bunch of stuff I have to learn about solar power and rainwater and grey water planting to clean grey water and all of that stuff. So I know I have to learn all this stuff, but I also, I've done a little bit, but not enough. And possibly just creating a list of everything I actually have to learn about would help. And also finding better ways to learn about it. So just reading about it is okay, but it's better for me if I experience it firsthand. So seeing if there are other people I could visit or learn from would be better.
Part of me also wonders if that already exists in a way that's easy for you to access hands-on learning for preparing for this type of life. And if not, if that could be a possible need that might be fun for you to fulfill. Just
thought of that. Yeah.
And as you think about spending your time exploring these different things, whether it's doing the learning that you need to do in order to ramp up for this new lifestyle, or also exploring some of the like artistic hands-on endeavors, do you still feel guilt about spending your time outside of work in that way?
No, then I don't feel guilt at all.
Okay.
Because in my head, I was starting a business. But if I break it down to all the little tasks of everything I have to do, it's not under a label starting a business. It's more under the label things to do for new life. And then there's no guilt, just excitement. So yeah, breaking that down and getting rid of the labels was really helpful.
Great. Yeah, sometimes I find that you feel we'll feel a certain emotion that makes us kind of just like, okay, let me just not touch that.
Yeah, I've definitely been feeling that for the last 3 months. Been like, I have to do this, but I don't want to do it, and I'm just going to not do anything.
Mhm.
Because if I start doing it, then I don't know, I'm being disloyal or something. But if I look at it through a different lens and I break it down into smaller pieces, then I don't feel that.
Great.
Sorry. This whole thing has really made me realize over the last few months how many deep set belief systems I have around stuff, and pulling them apart to figure out where they come from and why they are there. And yeah, it's been fascinating. Thank you.
The next time you're facing a decision, remember that you can break it down into smaller, more manageable parts. There are 3 components to any decision. The first is objectives, the second is options, and the third is information. As you move through the examination of these various components, you may come across some emotions. And again, emotions are not an enemy here. They're simply another data point. So when you feel an emotion come up, take the time to stop and observe. Where is this emotion coming from? What is the story that's precipitating it? Is this story useful? Is it true? And if not, how is it that you can reframe the story you're telling yourself to produce an emotion that may be more helpful in moving you towards your goal? Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you know of someone who might benefit from learning more about decision making, send them a link to our website, askadecisionengineer.com. Also, the website is where you should go if you're interested in more resources on decision making, or if you would like to submit a question to potentially be answered on a future episode. Again, this is Michelle Florendo from Ask a Decision Engineer. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.